Well, with that said, what's going on, Bez? Bez is our first-person correspondent for the Masters. He was there earlier this week. How was it?
Yeah, it's nice to see that the weather is now dry as soon as I'm no longer on site. But yeah, it was a blast. Jim and I were down there all day Tuesday and Wednesday. We were fortunate enough to be invited by Jay Danzy and Jordan Lewis from Endeavor. Jay and Jordan rep Jordan Spieth and Patrick Cantlay and a few other guys actually. A few other guys that are actually playing in the event, but the most notable guys are Spieth and Cantlay, and we were lucky enough that they wanted to spend some time with us and hooked us up last minute to go down there for a couple of days. Tuesday was a little bit of a wash, but spent a few hours on the course, and then got to spend a little bit of time at a place called Berkman's, which is a separate area on property with a bunch of restaurants and amenities that the Endeavor guys were kind enough to hook us up with, and we were able to hang out there for a few hours after, well after the course was shut down, and then Wednesday we went back out, got to see Tiger and JT and Freddie basically play 11 through 18. It was a complete madhouse. But got to see those. We got there basically as soon as the gates opened and headed right out to see them as soon as we knew that Tiger had teed off. He went off of 10 at 8 a.m. and got to see him dunk a ball in Race Creek. So it was nice to see him not do that today. And then it rained. We left for a little bit. One of our members, Brooks, manages a band that performs at the Wheels Up house for the last 10 years. And so Brooks hooked us up with access to the Wheels Up house. So we got to hang there for a couple hours. And then we went back to the course and caught a good chunk of the par 3 contest until another storm came in and we had to leave. But honestly, no shortage of damage was done at the merchandise shop, despite the fact that we were only there. I think Jim and I both went twice. We went once on Tuesday and on Wednesday, and we actually shipped the stuff that we bought back home because we didn't have enough room in our luggage to actually get everything back. So, but yeah, honestly, even if we had spent 3 hours there on Tuesday and that was it, like it's tough to beat any amount of time on that property this week. So, and aside from that, we had a ton of awesome meetings. We were actually there for work, despite what I've just talked about for the last 5 minutes. But had some great meetings with obviously the Endeavor guys who are super pumped about what we're working on. And we ended up spending a lot of time kind of coincidentally with this guy, Chad Mumm, who is the executive producer for Netflix's PGA, sort of like version of Drive to Survive or Hard Knocks. And got to learn a lot more about that project and the type of access that they're getting even at Augusta, which access that Augusta has never given anyone before to film. And then we spent a bunch of time with the guys over at CAA and Wasserman, who invited us to some of the stuff that they were hosting. And these are all groups that we've been talking to for the last, honestly, basically since like the middle of January, to find ways to work with their clients, obviously almost all tour pros, find out ways to get them involved with the project, either investing or participating, contributing content, you name it. So it's great to actually like spend time with these people face to face, who we've only known via Zoom for the last 3-4 months. Not dissimilar from spending time with a lot of you all down in Austin after spending time on Discord for 3 months. And yeah, just wanted to come on tonight, share quick overview on what we did down there, and then really just turn it over to Q&A for the next 25, 30 minutes. Happy to answer questions that people have about the conversations we had in Augusta, anything going on with the project, whether it's meetings that we had down there or otherwise, because obviously there's a lot going on the course and club front. So happy to give people updates and answer questions on that side of things too, and then any other partnership things. So,
well, let's just kick it off. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand in the chat. I'm gonna ask a question before anybody else gets the chance to. My question is, how familiar are Spieth and Cantley with NFTs and kind of crypto in general? Are what's it like? What's it? I don't know. What is their perspective on what is happening in this realm of things?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to what Jay and Jordan shared with us kind of through their conversation with those guys. But I mean, we've spoken to those two managers more than any other group out there, including we've probably had 3 or 4 calls with them. I met Jordan in New York. So actually, of all the people that we saw down there, I actually had met one person face to face. So I had spent an hour with Jordan in New York already, and then we had a 2-hour lunch. And then Jim was tired on Tuesday night, so I was sent out on an expedition Tuesday night. So I went to the Endeavor House by myself, and hung with those guys. And then we went back Wednesday. Jordan wasn't there, but we hung out with Jay. We saw Jay at the course on Wednesday. So I feel like I have we just have a great relationship with them. They really understand the project, and they understand the promise of the project and how it really is like at its core trying to grow the game. And that's what they're like singularly focused on as well, outside of obviously repping, those two guys. Like when they think about sort of the rest of golf, the golf ecosystem that they touch, and they know everyone and have worked with virtually everyone. So like fundamentally, like our mission from a golf perspective very much aligns with them. As it relates to the NFT and crypto side of things, I'd say like bluntly, like they think Patrick is probably thinking about it more than Jordan. And that's not to say that Jordan isn't, because all of these guys now think of themselves as like running a business. They're not just a golfer. Like people like Tiger and Phil and even Greg Norman before those guys like recognized that they were a brand and they could build a business around themselves if they were successful enough. And so that's honestly how a lot of these players have structured things now. They kind of operate like kind of like mini family offices in a lot of ways. And they're thinking about how they invest. They're thinking about how to build businesses around themselves. They're thinking about what they can do from a licensing perspective when it comes to name, image, and likeness, not just NIL from a college perspective, but NIL at a tour pro perspective. I think having watched a lot of interviews that those two guys have done, it doesn't surprise me that much that they think Patrick might be more interested, just like innately like curious. Like they're like, yeah, we want to have you sit down with Patrick for 30 minutes, an hour. And like, he's like, be prepared for him to like ask you a lot of questions, like, and not like softballs. And I mean, in some ways, like a brand, it's like very much brand aligned. Like one of his major sponsors is Goldman Sachs. Like one of his major sponsors is like a financial services company. Obviously, there's a whole host of people in the crypto world who think traditional financial services are broken, which is why crypto has a place. But like I'd say of the sponsors that are traditional sponsors that are out there, they're probably like one of the most closely aligned, at least from a fintech and financial services perspective. So, I think that, long-winded way of saying, I think if I had to like stack rank them, I would say Cantlay is more like like is already thinking about this. They saw what Bryson did. They saw that it wasn't all that successful. They see what Autograph is doing, working with Tiger. We know from our meetings down there that they just closed another golfer who's going to be joining Autograph, who's going to be doing something on Autograph. And so I think more and more people, more and more tour pros are recognizing that there's an opportunity to do something around their personal brand, and NFTs are a very natural extension of that. And do something well beyond just what like the PGA Tour is like going to do with Dapper, but like actually do something for like themselves.
Oh wow! So is PGA Tour and Dapper? That's a confirmed thing.
It's not
You're
official,
looking to
but
get,
like yeah, it's not official, but the PGA Tour has put out an RFP, start like doing stuff in crypto.
right.
What they've done
So
through
right up
Dapper.
there with.
It's like Top Shots and what they've
Okay.
done with the NFL. And
Well, that's really cool. Yep, UFC Strike.
yeah,
With that being
I
said,
think the challenge that these guys have is like
how was what's up, Bez? I think you cut out just a tad right there.
oh, I was just saying, I think the challenge that they're going to have is that like it just doesn't generate a lot of money for these guys. I mean, the lower level guys, they get a cut and it might move the needle for them, but like if you're Colin Morikawa or Jordan Spieth or Patrick Cantlay or Brooks Koepka or whatever, like a small sort of like little bump that comes from a Dapper deal that they do with PGA Tour doesn't necessarily move the needle for you, because you're making so much money elsewhere. So I think they need to like think about what they can do on their own, and hopefully that's where we can get involved in some way.
Right. Yeah. As I say, that's exactly. We can kind of be that, middleman per se to introduce these pros into this realm. That's really cool. So we're gonna bring up a guest from the audience, Brian. I'm gonna add you as a speaker. All right, you should be good to go. Hello, welcome up. Your mic is muted, Brian. Well, I think he's having some troubles. So before we move on to Brian, I just want to ask, did going to the pro shop, is this your first time at the Masters?
No, last time. So I went in 2012 and I went in 2019. So yeah, very, very fortunate to have been a couple times and have a lay of the land. So I knew Jim was there in 2015. We both kind of knew what we wanted to. We had an itinerary. I wanted to like a few sites as soon as we got there. One of which being a merchandising shop.
Right. Now, how much has that changed over the course of 10 years that you've been there?
And when I was there, I built this merchandising center, which is now massive. Like that was they built that like after it's that new now, but the first year I was there, it didn't exist. And then building on site, like probably.
Bez, you're breaking up quite a bit.
Berkman's didn't exist until 2016.
And this might also be the glitch that Twitter has with speakers. I think currently speakers, I think Bez actually sounds good to other people, but to speakers, it might be lagging. Okay, so it looks like several of our listeners are actually having trouble hearing you as well, Bez. We just might be running into connection issues. Just no problem. It happens.
Okay. Why don't we lean back?
Yeah, we could try that. Yeah, I'll remove
so
you
weird.
and
I'm
then
leaving.
bring you back up. You should be good to go.
How about now?
It's clear now.
Okay.
I didn't hear any breakup in that.
Okay, well, we'll give it a shot.
All right, so let's pick up our last question. Like I said, what has really changed?
Yeah.
I guess in the merchandise.
Yeah.
From the past 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, they release new stuff every year. I mean, I think the stuff the biggest changes. I mean, there's a few major changes. One is like the infrastructure of the club is way different. So they've built a bunch of buildings on site. Like the merchandising tent was built within the last 10 years. Tent is not a right word. It's like a complex. Was built in the last 10 years. There's a massive press building that was built in the last like 7 or 8 years. Berkman's was built, I think it opened in 2016. So like all of these things have, been funded and built. Obviously, the course has had like a bunch of changes that are some more significant than others. But I think fundamentally, like the experience as a patron at the event like hasn't changed, and that's what they like do like exceptionally well. Like it basically is a sporting event that like it's like part museum, part like sporting competition, part like party, part like it's like a hodgepodge of a bunch of different like things. And I think the number one thing is that it's run like so insanely well that like you can't go to any other sporting event, let alone golf tournament, because like the Masters has ruined everything else for you. Like it's
Wow.
the fact that the fact that every like the price of food is like so like ridiculously cheap. Like like all of these things that like they honestly in some ways like they can get away with doing because of the revenue that they drive from other areas. They can make the experience on site, like when you're buying food and beer and whatever, like super affordable. Like you buy a pulled pork sandwich for $3. Like that just doesn't exist. Like that just doesn't happen. Like you actually can have like a beer for like $4. Like what sporting event can you get a beer for $4? Like that's not like a thing. And honestly, in some ways, it's not that dissimilar from the way that we think about like what we're building here at LinksDAO. Like we want to generate revenue in lots and lots of other ways that allow like the club and membership experience to be like as affordable and cheap and attainable as possible. And so basically you're like, if you're able to monetize in lots of other ways, you can pass on all those benefits to for us like members and guests, and for Augusta National and the Masters, you pass those on to patrons and give them access to an event that they could theoretically never have anywhere else.
Right. I actually put some thought into like those prices, and like you said, kind of subsidize it, find ways to pay for it outside of the actual purchase of the food or drink, because people don't carry around $15 in cash to buy a single beer. It's just not realistic. And so like if you could find ways to charge that outside of just food and beverage, and be able to keep that price low, and it just makes people happy, it seems.
Yeah, I'd say that's the other thing is like everyone who's there recognizes that they're like obscenely lucky to be there. Like everyone is like the happiest they've ever been when they're at Augusta National. Like no, like it's impossible to be when there is like terrible. Not a big deal. Like no one, like no one. It's impossible to have like a bad day there.
So moving on, Doug, I was wondering if you had any questions for Bez up here. I know something has to have popped up that made you wonder, compare your experiences and caddying and what's going on at the Masters.
Yeah, I got one. This is just kind of off the top of my head. Can everybody hear me all right? Can you hear me
Yep.
all right, Dom? Yeah,
Yep.
So there's always one caddy on that like takes over Twitter for, a couple days. They're like, oh, look at this, caddy goals. Did you see any caddies that were like, they all had the jumper, but had like definitely had some immense swag to them? Like, okay, this guy isn't just wearing the jumper; he is rocking the jumper.
I mean, Joe LaCava definitely like rocks the jumper. Right, he was like unbuttoned. He's got like usually has like some cool t-shirt like underneath. I'd say like Bones, like he looks like the jumper was like made for him. Like he like should like caddy in the jumper at every other event. And then the funny thing is like they have 4 caddies on like a bunch of the tees and like landing areas, and those guys have to wear the jumper too. And we were walking out one night, and this like I don't know, this guy who I guess maybe had never been to Augusta National before, he walks by this 4 caddy who is wearing the jumper, and the only difference is that he doesn't have like a number and name on the back. But I guess the guy who was attending like he just didn't know like that like bag carrying caddies would be wearing the jumper, and he asked him who he caddied for, and the guy goes, "Oh, I caddied for Nicholas." It's complete trolled. The guy was like, "Wait, what?" He's like, I'm a 4 caddy. I just like tell these guys when they can tee off. Like I'm not like here to like carry a bag.
That is awesome. I love that.
And it was like
Oh my
perfect.
gosh.
Like he just nailed the timing. It's either like just an incredible like thing that just came to him, or he's had that like line like in his back pocket because like so many other people have already asked him that.
Yeah.
Every caddy I've met just has like this certain little like these witty comments that they can snap back. And I think it's because we get a lot of like he's probably just a caddy at Augusta, and so he probably gets a lot of people being like, or we all do. It's like, oh, that was a bad read, and like you got to come up with something quick, funny, not too mean, and kind of like make a joke about how bad their putting is and not your read. So we're always trying to give it back as much as we can. But that's a freaking awesome story. A caddy for Nicholas. That's awesome.
So we're gonna move on to a question from the audience. We're gonna bring up John. Adding right now. Welcome to the stage, John.
Hey, thanks, Dom. Hey, Bez. I
Problem.
guess first light question, just and then I have a follow up. But if there was one item from the pro shop that you couldn't leave without getting, what would it have been? I know it's probably tough.
Well, it's funny. So Jim and I bought the exact same jacket without knowing it. Like we literally walked out, like had their bags, and he's like, "Oh, like nice jacket." And I looked at it and I was like, "Oh shit." So I think it was probably that, because he and I independently made that, or we could just be both making a terrible choice and bought the same thing. But there's a few Augusta, like Links, we have a members only logo, and so at Berkman's they had a bunch of stuff that was like had the members only Augusta National logo on it, and so this jacket had it. So that was why I had to have when I knew that we had the Berkman's access, I was like, I have to get a members only logo.
Oh, good pickup.
I don't care what it is. So that, whether it was a shirt, which I also bought, or this jacket, had to have a members only stamp on it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you were spoiled. Hey, and then I know you talked earlier that you would share with us a little bit on as far as the fundraising for the golf course. I don't know if not really anything specific, but I guess just curious if you could give us a high level overview of where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. So we are I'd say we are in the closing stages of having a club management group that we want to work with, and they want to work with us, which is probably even more important. And once we have that officially locked down and closed, which we want to get done, I mean, ideally by the end of the month, if not sooner, they'll help us run a proper RFP process with an architect or designer for the course. We've spoken to a dozen of these guys. We really like 4 or 5 of them. I spoke to them all within the last couple of weeks before we went down to Augusta, mostly because I was trying to get them to meet up with us down there if they were going to be in town. All of them are still super engaged in the project. They all got back to me immediately. And so this management group will help us not, do something stupid when it comes to how we structure these things and run like a very tight process. But this management group will likely also have some sort of, I'll call, investment-like relationship with us, whether it's directly investing or whether it's some sort of, they're giving us sort of in-kind work as a means of, sort of as a sweat equity type investment. But we're super pumped about this group, and like I said, more importantly, like they really want to do something with us, and really understand the nature of the project and understand like the nature of the type of course and club and type of golf that we want to facilitate. And so, honestly, as soon as that gets signed, like we can move very quickly on securing the architect, and we think that we're going to see a ton of sites that we wouldn't have seen without having these, this group and this architect in affiliation with us. In fact, this management group actually wanted us to go look at a site today with them right near near Augusta, but our schedules didn't really allow for it. And we're not even working with them yet. So that's kind of an indication of how excited they are about what we're doing, that they are looking to scout sites with us even before we've even signed a contract with them. So, and they have probably another half dozen sites that they've alluded to that they think are a really good fit for what we're trying to build and create. And so, I'd say I know people have been a little maybe disappointed or they wanted more sort of frequent updates, but as it relates to the course and the club, and we're going to be, sharing those, and there'll be much more to come as once we sign these 2 arrangements. But honestly, there just wasn't a lot to share until we got to a good point with this management group, and then obviously an architect and designer that we want to work with. So we're very, very close.
Yeah, good. And I was going to say, once pen is to paper, then we'll likely hear about who that management group is, and then like you said, then you'll be going after an architect. So is the idea of getting an architect, though, I mean, that would even still be the case for a site that's already a golf course, or I mean, is it still on the table for us to kind of start from scratch? Or
Yeah, I mean, even if we buy a course that's playable, so to speak, we'd still want to have an architect come in and potentially
make it our own.
Reduce some green complexes. Green complexes, maybe move some bunkers, maybe reroute it in some way if they think that lends itself to a slightly different routing. It could be much more cosmetic. Frankly, it could be like, we should just take out some trees because this area is overgrown and it's killing some of the grass here, and this course would play better if it was more open.
Okay.
So but we're definitely not averse to doing these things in tandem, right? If we find a great site that lends itself to an awesome course and it needs to get built, I think it'd be an ideal outcome if we could have, we'd start building something and, restoring or slightly redesigning something at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks.
Cool.
Well, thanks for coming up, John. All right. So, Bez, I just wanted to ask you a question regarding the course. So, what are your biggest inspirations for course design and maybe aesthetic of what it's going to be like? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like what's become termed as like modern golf, like not a lot of trees, a lot of width in the fairway, like allows, enables, makes the course playable for people of like high handicappers and low handicappers. Really interesting green complexes, which is where ideally most of the challenge resides. And so for a low handicapper, you're always going to find your ball. You're going to keep the ball in the fairway. You're going to have a shot at the green, and then like things get more interesting the closer you get to the green. And if you're a low handicapper, like even if the fairway is 55, 60 yards wide, you really only think it's 25 or 30 yards wide because you have to be on one half of the fairway. You're completely, you're gonna have a terrible angle to the green or something like that. And so I think there's certain architects over the last 15 to 20 years who have done a very good job of like nailing like this experience, and they figured out a way to like engage people across all levels of like all skill levels. I think there's like some aesthetic things that I like, frankly, that some courses have. Like I love when a green is like mowed down and like connects to a tee box and it kind of just flows like together. Like I think that's like a really cool look on certain homes. There's like weird things like that I like that I'm not like necessarily drawing inspiration from, but are just like weird quirks or tweaks like that. I like courses that don't have a ton of water. Like I'd rather be penalized like rough or like hard green complexes like that have like tons of like slope and steep runoffs or challenging traps than like just get penalized because like you hit a ball in a lake. Like I can't stand like Florida golf. No offense.
I'm with you on that.
But yeah, I just don't think a defense should just be like nothing but water. Like make me do something, like maybe figure out something else.
I want to talk about the designers on that part. When you say Florida golf, I've caddied at Trump Doral, Key Island. My favorite designer, I think, is Tom Watson. He has exactly that sort of feel you're talking about with wider fairways, not a lot of water, complicated greens. And I think you're dead on with that for that trying to be the case, because you go to a place like Doral, a lot of my high handicap players that I'm caddying for get super frustrated because they're just all like, if you miss to the right, you're in the water. If you go long, you're in the water. It's like, it gets really frustrating. So a guy like Tom Watson, I don't know if we're talking to him or not, but who designed Cacique on Kiwa Island, did a really good job of kind of minimizing the water and expanding the fairways to a point where it's like, all right, you missed a little right, you're just in the rough, get back and play, and you can still make something happen.
Absolutely. It's funny. We actually, Jim and I greeted Tom Watson at one of the parties last night. It was hilarious. Tom Watson walked into this tent, and Jim and I were right there, and we introduced ourselves. He was like, "Great, I'm gonna go somewhere else now."
Oh no way! It's kind of big time, you guys. Damn.
He was like, "Oh," he was like, "That's great. I'm gonna go get a drink."
Yeah,
I was like,
Tom Watson does love his drinks. That's for sure.
I was like, he's got a tea time in 12 hours. I don't know why I hope he's not out late. Yeah, it was, but yeah, I agree with you. I think to me, that type of even the ocean course doesn't have a ton of water. There's only a few holes that you got to carry stuff. But those green complexes are brutal.
Yeah, the ocean course, you're right. It's funny, you would think being called the ocean course, it would have a ton of water, but you're right, there's only a few. And the whole thing about Kiowa Island is like, I always think of island golf as like being a lot of water, but they made a really good job of just like making the fairways wide enough where it's like if you hit into the water, you really tried to hit into the water. Like you really tried to hit into that water.
My favorite thing about playing at Kiowa was the starter was like, there's no out of bounds on this course. So if you can find it, you can hit it. He's like, but trust me, you're not going to find it.
Yeah, that fescue out there is no joke.
Oh, it's so brutal.
Is for sure.
So we're gonna bring up another guest out of the audience. We're gonna bring up LinksDAO.
I like the sound of LinksDAO. That sounds pretty good.
All right, the stage is yours, LinksDAO. Welcome up.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Going on.
What's up, team? How's it going? I just want to make sure everyone knows that I'm part of LinksDAO. Love it. Got a few memberships. Huge fan. Just came from a country club, actually, Glenwild out in Utah. It's pretty freaking sweet. It looks amazing right now, but nothing like Augusta. So I'm glad we're representing down there.
Yeah, it's fun to have people know what LinksDAO was. Who we weren't we didn't have we weren't scheduled to meet with. Like they asked what we do or where we're from, and we told them. They're like, oh, like some people had a membership, some people had just heard of the project and were super interested about learning more about it. So it's nice to see. Nice to see that it's definitely made its way into like the golf inner circles.
And so between players and sponsors, who do you feel gravitated to you guys more?
I would say sponsors. Work there is tricky to do it in an authentic and real way. And that's that'll happen at a better sense for who actually is genuinely curious about the space, who really has genuine interest in the project. And those types of conversations are going to happen with, over the course of much longer than January 1st till now. And fortunately, we have a really good plan coming out of these last couple of days. We have a really good plan for how to get in front of those groups and vet and those individuals and vet them really well. And we have a good, I think we have a good partner who can help us get in front of what we want to. And it's on us, obviously, to sell and tell the story and be convincing and find alignment. But I don't think we'll struggle to get in front of anyone we want to talk to in the entire golf world at this point.
All right, you back up here.
Yeah, my bad, guys. Got rugged, and I was like, no.
Oh, good.
So, how's the weather?
How was the weather? Well, the weather when I was there was not ideal. I got up at 3:45 a.m. this morning to fly home, and of course, the weather there is now fantastic. So, and it's shitty in New York tonight. So, I traded rain in Augusta for rain in New York.
Taking one for the team.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So is Jim still there?
No, Jim also came home. Not as early as I did, but I think Jim had something tonight that he or he couldn't make it to the spaces. Unless he tricked me. And yeah, I know it.
All right. Well, we've done 45 minutes. I think we're gonna probably end it here. I just want to thank everybody for coming up. I want to thank Bez and Daniel and Doug for their time tonight. And do you have any departing words, Bez?
No, I appreciate everyone hopping on. I know it's a late, maybe depending on where you are, a late spaces, but feel like we're in awesome shape coming out of the last couple of days. We've got some really important partners lined up that are going to help take this project to the next level. We just put pen to paper on signing those contracts, and that should happen over the course of the next, basically a few weeks. And we expect for the spring and summer to be pretty insane from an updates perspective.
Well, we're all excited. And with that being said, again, thank you everybody that came up and asked questions, and everybody who tuned in tonight. And let's finish watching the Masters Sunday. Let's all root for Tiger. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Take care.